What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Stream Kings. Your boy Michael Atkinson and Daniel Deshane back at it again. What's up, big guy? How's it going?
What's going on, man? Coming to you live from my dad's study slash office.
Stable internet connection and some great decor in the background, looks like. So it's always
Yeah,
good.
well, the water went out of my apartment. So,
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I forgot that. How is the ice up there? Is it still, you guys still on like snow days and everything?
no, it's gone now, but
Okay.
it was pretty rough for a while.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, glad you're out of it. I'm glad all the people all the people are gonna be free to do as they please now. So, all right,
Oh, yeah.
awesome. So, glad to have you here, buddy, and all of our listeners out there. We are looking forward to this episode because last week, or 2 weeks ago, we chatted a little bit just about who we were and some stuff we're looking forward to. But today, we are coming at you live talking about a a banger of a movie. A couple adjectives I just wrote down immediately were dark, disturbing, and divisive. We're going to be talking about the movie Saltburn. What's so funny, Dan?
I, you're so excited to say it. Here's
I
some stuff I
was.
wrote down. You ready for it? Dark, divisive, disturbing. That's right.
Boom.
We're talking about Saltburn.
You know how long I thought about that? Like at least 20 minutes to try to figure that out. So
I just have like, wow, loved it.
that's all you wrote down?
But I was
Oh.
speechless without speech.
No, so I think if you've been on social media here recently, you've seen something about Saltburn. I think people either love it, people hate it. In the news, especially today, just with the Oscar nominations and some of that kind of stuff, and Saltburn was notably left out of any nominations at all. But it's currently 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, 3.5 stars on Letterboxd, which is slightly above where I put it because my initial reaction to the movie, which I texted Daniel and I was like, dude, what did you just have me watch? Which, to be fair, we agreed to do this movie together, but I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah, you made it sound like it was totally my fault, and you were like, "Oh, I'm picking the movie next time." I'm like, this was half your idea. 50% of this was you.
I yeah, whatever. I still don't think so, but I will see that point. I'm still gonna pick the next movie. So, overall, I enjoyed it. I thought this was a beautiful film, interesting, great characters. Oh, before we get started, too, I'm sorry, before we get too far, there are gonna be spoilers to this movie. Like I think Daniel and I are gonna try our best not to talk about like too much, but like right? Can you agree to that, Dan? Like we're going to be talking about some stuff. So, um, you want to say something?
Yeah. I can't promise I won't get like hyped and drop
Hmm.
something on accident,
Yeah,
but I'll do my best not to do anything major. But
yeah,
obviously, if you just want to go in blind, which I would 100% recommend, 'cause I did
yeah,
not, and we can talk about that here in a second, but
yeah.
you definitely just a heads up, minor spoilers.
Well, and I think too, like within the idea of our podcast in particular, we're looking at stuff that you can find on streaming platforms and stuff that you can find not in theaters, right? So, hopefully, you see that we release this podcast. Maybe you go watch it really quick, where it's currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Hopefully, you go check it out and then come check out our pod. Or maybe you just don't care to see the movie and you want to check us out. So, just before we get too far, did want to say that, but. Um, Personally, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. There were a few scenes that I thought were a little over the top. That made me that were just a little tough to handle. I think, but overall, I did enjoy the movie. I gave it 2.5 out of 5, but realistically, it's probably higher than that. I just don't like to gag when I'm watching a movie, so you know, here I am.
So I don't know. Maybe I had number one. I looked up the entire plot prior to seeing it, not
Hmm.
intentionally.
Right.
But this was one of those movies, like it first came out, I guess, I don't remember, was it last year?
It was
Maybe?
2023. Yeah, November
Yeah.
23.
And I remember seeing a lot about it, and I saw it was premiering at a festival. And I'm like, this is going to be one of those ones where I'm probably not going to be able to get a hold of very easily. So
Mm-hmm.
I just read the plot.
Yeah.
Um, and so I went into it, I guess, knowing what happened, but even still, it's still knowing what happened. I still was like on the edge of my seat. Like I was really like fully invested in it. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that may also be because I don't typically watch movies like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of intentionally, I guess, like a mentally draining kind of day job leads me to find things that typically aren't so dramatic. But, like I really do like those. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't watched one in a while. And I guess I'd forgotten
Sure.
how much I really did enjoy that type of film. And so
Sure.
I really liked it. And I think for me, it was probably a 4 out of 5.
Yeah. 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 No, and that's I don't think, and like I said, it is pretty divisive, right? People loved it. I'm sure their score is way above like the 70%, which I don't think Rotten Tomatoes is end all be all, right? I don't think either of us are going to say that, but
No.
there's going to be people who are way higher than that, and there's going to be people that are way lower. Like, the article that you sent me earlier on the Oscar nominations, like it was like half the people were like, yeah, well, half of you only watched it through TikTok, so of course
Right,
it
right, right.
didn't it didn't deserve an Oscar nomination. And half the people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they got shafted like that, right?
Right.
So I think it's interesting to see, and with any movie, right? There's going to be different takes, and people are going to like things or not. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
all right. So before we get too far into some of our different categories and stuff like that, there's this movie has a ton of imagery. Just like so much stuff out there. Um, I had a couple things that I thought were really interesting and just caught on as I was watching, and I think Dan, you have a couple as well.
Hmm.
Do you want to start us off with one that you noticed when you thought was really cool?
I guess the first one, and it's not. I do have a couple. The first and most obvious one, and I think a lot of people have noticed this too. It's a big sticky one. They smoke like a lot, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, and Ollie, his character doesn't as much,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was. I personally think that was on purpose because for a while he's over here,
Mm-hmm.
and the Catton family is this rich, well-to-do, wealthy people, and he's kind of the outsider. But and you and I were talking about it before. Cigarettes are not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be looking too far into it, but to me personally, it's like also in film, cigarettes are also just a pretty well-known trope for like self-destructive, decadent habits. You
Yeah.
know, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it was pretty telling that like no matter how rich and stuff they are, they still do stuff, and even more so without regards to consequences,
Mm-hmm.
and like cigarettes aren't cheap, man. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everybody in every scene has like a cigarette,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
For
so that
sure.
was just the average
If not
person
something
can't smoke
stronger.
like that, not in the early
Yeah.
2000s and definitely not now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big one that I noticed kind of early on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, really cool. One that I noticed that a little bit more like I think in your face and obvious, but it was just like how Oliver was really compared to different animals throughout the movie, right? Like it's like often like dropped like really subtly, right? When he was referred to as a vampire, as a spider, as a snake, like all of these things and like other subtle uses of that, like when he's sitting down at the bar, when they're first in college, right? He's first getting introduced to Felix and everything. Um, he tries to snake out of paying for the drinks for everybody, right?
hmm
And you don't really think about that at first. You're like, oh yeah, he's like snaking out of it, but then you see like, especially like from perspective of the end, like that's kind of like him trying to work his way into the group, right, and into Felix's circle,
Right.
and I think trying to like to latch on, try he's a leech in the end, but you don't really know that until about at least halfway
Right.
through
And
the
even
movie.
that moment in particular, like that very moment where like he's at the bar and trying to pay for the drinks, like that moment in particular is pointed back to as one of the moments where he's purposely trying to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 So I love like just some of the comparison, and I have one more thing on that later, but I'm gonna
Okay.
save it, pocket it. But yeah, that was one of my favorite little things. And again, very kind of obvious, but I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
still cool.
Mm-hmm. I liked one more thing before we go. Um, I'm just going to say it here because I don't know where else I was going to say it, but I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. There's a lot of lurking,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of peeking in and
Yeah.
around things. And I thought it was pretty, I still haven't, I guess, m- settled on one specific reason why, but I really enjoyed people looking at one another through windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was kind of like that whole, and it was everybody. It wasn't just Oliver looking in on them. It was even in some ways them looking in on him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like, does that change the way you view people? Because you're not getting the full picture.
Right.
Like where Oliver's looking in on Felix at one point.
Mm-hmm.
He's seeing him be with a woman, but
Mm-hmm.
what else is really going on in there? He doesn't really know. He's just
Right.
getting visual, and so it's like you can see straight through the window, but is that ever really like the full picture of what exactly is going on?
Right. Like you're seeing what's going on through a lens, right? Like
Right,
you don't have the full picture, you have just part of it. Yeah.
right.
I did like that. And hopping off of that, like one other point that I thought was cool, and another object that I thought they used really, really well was mirrors. And if it's
Hmm.
not an actual mirror, like just how they're able to mirror like a reflection, right? And kind of what that shows about. Especially, they did it a lot with Oliver,
Right.
just kind of like him either looking into a mirror. I think they had it once, like where he was in water and it was like a reflection of Saltburn, like in the water and everything with him in it. I thought that was really cool. And even at one point where I think it's right before the bathroom scene, I believe, where Felix, or not Felix, where Oliver punches the mirror
Hmm.
because I think, yeah, you can say like he's frustrated, but I think, what the mirror means and kind of like his split personalities and everything, and him even maybe even like being a little frustrated with who he is and what he's become. But I
Right.
thought I liked how they used that object, and even if it wasn't that object, just that concept of like a reflection in a
Hmm.
copy. So
Yeah.
cool, cool, cool. I had like two more little snips. I'm gonna call them, tokening that term at least for this podcast until we can think of something better.
Subject to change, but Michael's
Yeah.
calling his notes snips.
Well, it's just two little things that like I don't think they didn't really fit in, but I thought that they were cool enough to talk about just like really quick. So,
Mhm.
um, and you can if you have some as well, like let's go back and forth. But one thing that I wrote down while I was watching the movie is I like no joke. I'd almost wrote this down. But when they go into Saltburn for the first time, and the whole family is watching Super Bad, I
Right.
was like, I before then felt like Oliver and Felix were Jonah Hill and Michael Cera's characters. Like I just felt
Hmm.
like that was like the vibe that kind of gave off, like brothers, but like where one is like not actually brothers, but like one's kind of cool and one's kind of like a geek. And I
Hmm.
don't know. I 100% thought that embodied their relationship. And then they ended up watching it in the movie. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Uh, do you have any other ones,
um,
or am I just cranking them out?
no, I did, and kind of piggybacking off that, I really liked the the cues they gave for the time period. Like you said, them
Mm-hmm.
watching Super Bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little montage of like when Oliver first gets there, of him just sort of like them just being together, and they're watching like The Ring at one
Mm-hmm.
point. The
Yeah.
musical choices. I even texted you points like, "Oh, this MGMT Time to
MGMT.
Pretend's a nice touch," and I think also too, you know, even the title and you know lyrical content of the song is pretty accurate and pretty
I was gonna
telling.
say that. Yeah,
And
like
I didn't
that
know that I
moment.
didn't recognize it at first. At first, it was just
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, okay, cool time period drop," you know. And then later, it feels more on the nose now that I say it. But like at the time, I didn't
Right.
even
You're
really
like,
make the
oh, that's
connection.
a banger of a song here. And
Oh
then
yeah,
you
I
look
was just
back and you're
really into
like,
it because I was like, "Oh man, I haven't listened to this since probably the early 2000s."
yeah, yeah. And then you're like, oh wait, Oliver is pretending because he's a
Right.
jerk or snake. Yeah, I love the music.
Hmm.
And talking about just like period cues in general, like I loved like just looking at random things like the iPod touches or
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
touches, but the iPods, you know, and the music, just different things kind of gave us like little hints. One other little like scene that I just thought was like we can talk about cinematography a little bit if you want to, but just like was beautiful was in the maze scene where Felix and Oliver are in the middle by the Minotaur,
Hmm.
and Oliver is walking away from Felix, but like behind Felix is the Minotaur, like looking over him like menacingly, right?
Hmm.
You know, and I thought that this was interesting because like the Minotaur is a half human, half beast creature, right? You
Right.
know, and I think we talked a little bit about, Oliver, like compared to an animal, like he was almost like half man, half beast, anyways, right? So, like in
Right.
that moment, like we come to find out that something very significant happens like during that scene. um but I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna spoil it, I guess. It's like that's when Felix, like that's the last time we see Felix alive, you know. And
Right.
like I was like, this was just a really impressive like just scene and being able to see like, all right, you don't think that, but in that
Hmm.
whole moment there's something behind Felix just like hunting him down, and it's actually
Right.
right in front of him. It's Oliver. So
Hmm.
I thought that was really good.
And even too, like the whole party, I got into a deep dive, and I didn't want to go too deep because I knew I couldn't discuss the whole thing
Hmm.
on here. But like even like the theme of the party, like the Midsummer's Night Eve, you know, like um, with having Felix have the wings, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
um, placing him as like the oh gosh, I wish I knew more about it. The Fairy King,
Hmm.
Oberon, and then his little like minion in the play
Hmm.
is his name is Puck, and
Yeah.
he's like the satyr with the horns and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so even everybody's role in that, you know, like the mom, the dad, um, I should have written it all down, but again, I didn't want to get too far into it because I know we couldn't
Yeah.
get too much into it. But like the whole symbolism of the movie, kind of like culminating in that one, like you said, it like big scene.
Hmm.
You know, all the imagery and like stuff like that, and even the foreshadowing with like the one scene at the beginning where Oliver is looking in on
Hmm.
Felix, and he's got the tattoo of the wings on his
Yeah.
chest
Yeah.
or stomach area, whatever. But I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool, and I would love to read that article and then go back and watch it again and try to pick all the Easter eggs, symbolism stuff out.
Absolutely. And I think in just on that note of like watching again, like I think this is one of the few movies that we'll do. I mean, I don't know that, but where this is going to be the first time I've ever seen it. Like a lot of them, I think we choose probably going to have watched it before, and I'm going to be able to really deep dive. Like, I wish that I had the time to watch it again before we did the podcast just to really
Yeah,
see it,
I
because I
did
think
too.
there is a lot to this movie, and it really is well done. Like, I was a little harsh on it after I got done just because I was grossed out, but
You were
it,
pretty harsh on it.
I was just, you can ask, yeah, yeah, my roommate too. He like looked back a few times, like, "Are you okay?" It's like, no, I'm not. I'm not. So, but I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. I've seen a lot of movies though,
I
so
guess. I guess you've seen some stuff.
I've
You have
seen some
seen some
things,
stuff.
man.
All right. Anything else? Any little like little quips, snips, something like that before we
No,
hop into some categories?
not really.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So, as promised, we have some different awards and categories and stuff that we kind of want to talk about. Um, we are not as cool as the people who do the Oscars, the Academy Awards, but we're gonna give out some awards anyways because we want to. So, first and foremost, um, Daniel and I have a buddy, good old Dustin Robertson, who is a fan of the pod, and we love him dearly.
Always begging for a shout out too.
He is, he is. So here it is, Dustin. However, my man has seen like 3 movies in his lifetime, and it's like Jack Reacher, Remember the Titans, and I don't know,
I don't know,
probably
it was like Home Alone
The
2, like
Sandlot.
specifically like Home Alone 2 or something like that.
Uh, so, um, that's going to be a category going forward. And I think Daniel and I can both definitively say that Dustin has absolutely not seen this movie.
I
And
think
not because,
I can safely say that he's not seen it, and nor do I expect him ever to see it.
no, 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 we couldn't say anything about this movie that would make him be like, yeah, sounds
There,
good.
yeah, there's nothing in it that I could be like. I mean, there's some parts where it was like overwhelming, but I think you'd like X, Y,
Hmm.
and Z. There's nothing about this movie that I can see our friend Dustin Robertson wanting to enjoy.
No. So that's a quick one. That's a fun one just for us. So, all right. Next one, and this is another quick one. Could this movie be a theme park attraction? We're going to call this the Disneyfication Award. What do you think, Dan? Could this movie be a theme park attraction? If it could, what kind?
Let's see. Number one, I think you froze for a quick second, so I didn't hear all of it. But the Disneyfication is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not going to be a ride or attraction at Disney.
Not
I
at
think
Walt
we
Disney
can
World.
both safely say that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be. I think it would have to be a very specific event, such as, your Universal Halloween Horror Nights,
Yeah.
um, or even I don't even know theme park, but like they do those tours of like the where they shot Lord of the Rings. It could do
Mm-hmm.
like that's not even a theme park thing, but like
Ooh,
attraction.
that's
You
good
could
though.
take it through the whole compound, like the maze, the house, the
Mm-hmm.
grounds, the pool, lake, pond, whatever. So under the right circumstances, I think yes, it could be.
Okay, that's fair. I had written nope, absolutely not. But again, I think I answered this question right after I finished the movie and was just like, this isn't going anywhere. Nobody wants to see this. Nobody wants to know about it. But I think you're right. I think it could have a time and a place. I really, actually, I like the idea of doing like a backstage tour type thing. Just kind of like get to go in and like see how it was filmed, which I did. I don't know if you like went into it or anything, but I watched a YouTube video from Emerald Fennell where she kind of like started talking about just that first like going into Saltburn scene where she just talked about like the details and everything, like everything down to like the flypaper being on the chandelier, like that was it's all very intentional. You
Right.
drop something.
Yeah, I dropped something. So
So yeah, yeah. Anyways, it could have a time and a place. So any other thoughts before we hop on? All
no,
right,
so I
cool,
got on
cool.
that one.
Those are quick and easy. So the next award that we're gonna have is going to be trading places. So this award is we discussed this one in our podcast previously that we've done together. But if you could swap any actor or actress in this movie with anybody in movie history, who are you going to choose and why?
I feel like I want you to go first.
Okay.
I had a lot of trouble with this one.
Okay.
Um,
I had two. I
okay, go
actually
ahead.
chose two different ones. Balloons, look at that. And it was actually both of the
Mine
get it.
doesn't
You're
do
not
it.
cool enough. Sorry, pal. I'm the host.
Okay.
I don't make the rules. I was gonna actually replace both of the Catton family, like the parents. So for the
Okay.
father, Sir James, I actually think it would be awesome if we could see Christopher Walken in this role. Like Christopher Walken's a
Okay.
little old, but just kind of like I'm just trying to think of some of the lines where he's like, "Eat the bloody pie," it's like Christopher Walken like,
Right.
"Eat the bloody pie," just in
Yeah.
his own like
Yeah.
little way, right?
Mm.
I don't think it would have changed or really impacted the story all that much, but I think it would have given some extra star power. I thought the dad was kind of flat. Like I think he played it great, but I I think some Christopher Walken in there would have been some extra little like character. I don't know,
Right.
which I think they did
Right.
that on purpose because the dad was just a pretty boring guy.
Mm.
I mean, all his friends were named Henry, right? You know,
Oh, yeah,
um,
I love that.
I love that little note. It was just like, yeah, all he knows is people named Henry. So
Also, quick side note: this movie was really funny,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
darkly so, but it was a really funny movie too.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And so second, and this one I wasn't as passionate about. This one I put down as number two, but I think if we replaced Elspeth, Rosamund, I think I'm pronouncing that. Yeah, Rosamund Pike. I think Portia de Rossi would have been a good person in this role
Okay.
because she crushed it on Arrested Development as basically this character, you know, just
And
like
obvious, the easily one of my favorite shows too.
I wrote this down knowing that you were going to be excited about it, but I think um, Elspeth is a pretty shallow, basic character, and I just think that Portia de Rossi played that incredibly well in Arrested
Hmm.
Development. Um, not that Elspeth, or not that Rosamund Pike did a poor job with it. I just think it. I think she would have been a fun character. So that's what I had.
I I had a tough one. This was a very tough because I liked the movie, and part of why I loved the movie
Hmm.
was the casting. Um, and I had to kind of limit myself. I know it was like all time, but I was afraid if I went back too far, I'd just never pick. But I feel like
Yeah,
I would have
for sure.
liked, to be clear, if this were not a category we picked, I would not have changed anybody.
Hmm.
But I feel like it would have been a similar but like slightly different take on Oliver would it to have been played by somebody like Will Poulter.
Okay, interesting.
He maybe less so, but gives off kind of the same vibes and could be kind of like that friend that feels like they want to be a part of something but just isn't. Um, I don't think he gives off the kind of the same calculating
Hmm.
um, intensity that he brought, but I feel like I don't think that I would do it, but I think it would be interesting to see him in that role. I guess is
Sure.
a better way to put it
Yeah.
for me.
Well, Poulter's got that face, I think, where he's like kind of like villainous, but you don't really like know that until it gets like halfway through. I don't know. I
And
could see it.
a fun bonus one is that as I felt like I would have liked to have seen Benedict Cumberbatch as the butler as Duncan.
Ooh, that would have been fun.
Bonus bonus pick.
Although Duncan did pretty good, but yeah, I'm
No,
with you.
that
Benedict
is
would have been.
actually well, we'll get to him, but I loved Duncan.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm excited. Oh man. All right. Okay. No, my answer for that question is going to be too basic then. You were more thoughtful. So, all right, awesome. So, the next category slash award we want to hand out is called the National Treasure. So, this category is basically if there was something like an item from the movie that you could have stolen from the set. You know, you're there, you see door open, you're like, oh, I could take anything from this set right now. What are you taking and why? Um, Dan, you and I talked about this a little bit before the pod. This was kind of tough. I think we're going to have some easier answers for some different movies, but I didn't have a ton of stuff for this one. I think I can settle on something, but I
Mhm.
wasn't like overly excited. Uh, what do you think?
I this was tough too because I kind of agree with as much stuff as there was at the house. There wasn't just it wasn't anything that I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
like so what I went with was at the beginning of the movie, as Oliver is sort of beginning his narration, he takes out a cigarette and lights it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he takes it out of a really cool case, the
Mm-hmm.
cigarette, and he has
Yeah.
a really cool cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
And I thought they were really cool. And even like the crest
Yeah.
on the case. Um and you could even do a deep dive into like the crest.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff all over the internet, Reddit, whatever you can find about people trying to analyze and pick apart the crest. But I think that was just
Mm-hmm.
a really cool, and still, again, like the smoking thing to me. Like there's no need for a fancy lighter, but they had one. You don't
Right.
have to keep your cigarettes in what is probably a tin made of silver,
Yeah.
but they did. And I
Yeah.
think I saw somebody else, and I don't want to say it because I don't have their account in front of me, but they made a mention that there's 4 cigarettes in there, you know,
One for each.
one for each member of the family.
Hmm. Interesting. All
I
right.
know. So, and that may be, and I thought that was cool, and maybe that's overreaching, but I thought that was an interesting, because ultimately there's more than 4 people who kind of get it, so to speak. But yeah,
Are there? I guess we don't have to talk about it now. Okay. Okay. Cool. 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 I yeah. 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 Cause okay. Cause Farley gets away. You're not talking about him.
right. But that doesn't. I don't want to mean
I
like.
guess he gets
I don't
screwed still.
necessarily mean like ended.
Get it? Oh, okay. All right.
Like
That's
just
fair.
like
Okay.
got. And
Got.
I even saw something interesting. It's like we talked about Pamela. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really know what happened to Pamela.
Right. Right. Because you said she died, and then I looked at it, and I was like, she. They
You were
never
like,
said
wait, do
that.
you think she's dead? I was like,
I don't.
yeah,
I
they
don't.
just said she died.
But then I looked it up on the internet, and it was like they didn't say. They were ambiguous. I loved her, by the way. Side note, I thought she was great, and I liked that she was. Shoot, what was the other Emerald Fennell movie that she was in?
A promising young woman.
Promising Young Woman. Yep, 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 yeah. So I'm glad that she kind of stuck with her with Carrie Mulligan. So anyway, so my national treasure. I like that answer, by the way. I think that was really good, and that is a really cool item. Um, I settled down. I was going back and forth between a couple. I think as much as I hated this scene, and it's going to be a two-person job to steal this item, is the bathtub. I think like it's iconic. A lot of things happen in this bathtub. Multiple things happen. Um,
Right.
I would never use the bathtub after the things that occur. However, I think it would be a really cool prop or item from the movie. It's a dope bathtub too. It just sits there in the middle. Also,
I know,
like they
but
didn't
for
have any
somebody
like
who like eviscerated the movie, the first reaction, probably for that scene specifically, in a lot of ways,
yeah.
that's interesting that you'd want to keep that.
Well, the only other item that I could think about, and I kind of, it was going to be a twofer probably, was the antler headband that Oliver wears at his party.
Oh, his
Or,
whole outfit, I had that written down
yeah,
as my second option. The
nice.
jacket and everything.
That it was a dope outfit, and then or Felix's angel wings, so that he has also at the party. So those party fits were pretty fire. So could
Hmm.
have stolen any of those, but I just think the bathtub because it's iconic. But you're right, for somebody who like trashed the movie and the things that happen there, kind of hypocritical of me, I suppose. But all right, so next category we're going to talk about and hand out the hot date award. So this is the idea with this one is if you could like just go to dinner with anybody in this movie and just like enjoy an evening. Doesn't have to be romantic, doesn't have to be anything. It's just like who would you hang out with? Hot date. Dan, who you choosing?
Well, I think my answer may be different because I read it as a
You're
hot
actually going
date.
on a date. Oh, okay.
Right.
We could talk about that too.
So,
I'll go first then. I'll let you think.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think 1,000%. I think it would be Felix, just because like he's such a like a chill dude, and this is a cop out, right? Because he's the probably the purest character in the movie. It's a character where a lot of people are um, very shallow. They don't treat each other well at all. They're yeah, they're just not kind people at all. But Felix is pure hearted. He is there for his buddy. Even drives Oliver to like his parents' house on his because he thinks it's gonna bring some healing, and then comes to find out there's some big stuff that's happening there, right? But I think Felix for sure, just because he's a bro. Plus, if we're like hanging out, like who knows who else might pop up there. So that would be my choice.
I feel like Felix is the obvious answer, but
It is.
I feel like I could spend the afternoon with Duncan.
Yeah.
I think that would be hilarious
You, why?
because it would be because of what I just said. It would be hilarious.
Oh yeah, he would be. You'd be like hanging out in the cupboards and being like looking out and being like, "Look at
Right,
this."
right,
He'd just show you all of like the secret like viewing spaces. Like this is where I
right,
spy on everybody.
right. I kind of feel like either, but like specifically hot date. I feel like Elspeth or even Pamela. I
Mm-hmm.
love Carrie Mulligan.
Yeah,
Well, I like Rosamund Pike too in The Wheel of Time, and in this. So like, if we're
yeah.
going date, either of those.
Date. I'm taking Allison Oliver, but that's to each their own. Yeah,
Oh, I knew it.
good old Venetia. You know,
Good old Venetia. Right.
Venetia. All right. Okay. So, and we can work on that
Named
award if we
after the
want it to be.
blinds, Venetian blinds, if you will.
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows at this
I
point?
like to think that's true. I'm
You
gonna
just
go
made
with
it
that.
up right now.
No, it's a fun saw it on a Reddit post.
You saw it
So
on a
anyway,
Reddit
what's the
post.
next category? What's
Okay.
the next category?
um, we can. So we're kind of getting into some nitty gritty here, some a little bit more like meaningful categories and awards. So this one is the GOAT Award. So just like who won the movie, basically, whose performance was just over the top. Um, Number one, who do you think did best in this movie?
Again, this was tough because I really liked everybody, but I
Yes.
gotta go with Oliver. I
Yeah.
gotta go with
100%. I'm with you. Why? I
Barry K. Just because I can't say his last name, at
think
least
it's
not with any
Keegan or
confidence. Barry
Keegan.
K.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think it's like Keegan, I believe. I was watching on some YouTube.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but I'm not gonna try it because I'm
Okay.
afraid. So
I'll get roasted for it
Oliver,
then.
Barry
Sounds good.
K.
All right, but why Barry?
Just because like I feel like if I'd and this one I won't say disadvantage, but I feel like if I hadn't known what was going to happen,
Mhm.
I feel like I wouldn't have suspected anything,
Yeah.
anything,
Yep.
you know. And even after like just like you see him kind of like once everything's revealed, he just sort of slides so easily into like that quote, like the snake spider, you know, like it's like okay, well everything's on the open now. Let's just let it rip, and the whole
Yeah.
plan just starts like clicking together, and he's totally in charge.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I thought he killed it. Like, I did not see it coming. Totally out of left field. I thought he did a great job convincing the audience that he was a good guy. And I like he had me sold, right? Like I
Hmm.
think from the beginning being like a nerdy guy and then going to being like this guy like super manipulative and smart and cunning, but just I thought he crushed it. So
Hmm.
um I because I went in totally not knowing anything about it.
Right.
So I was making notes like halfway through the movie about how like the wealth of the Catton family was going to be like the focus of the movie, which it kind of was, but
Hmm.
I thought it was going to be more of like them being the villain, like because they had these like rescue people stories, right?
Right.
They had Pamela, they had Farley, and then they bring in Oliver. They're talking about like even when Venetia was talking to Oliver, it was like, "Oh, you're so much cooler than the one last year." It's like it
Yeah,
makes you
they
think.
name drop like a Eddie or I think was one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. It's like, oh, this is just like this year's or flavor of the month, But
Hmm.
so I thought it was totally
She's
going to
just
be.
the flavor of the week.
So I thought it was going to be about more about them and like how crappy of people they were, but in the end, it was kind of the opposite. So
I know, really and
I
truly,
thought he
like
did great.
morally, with a lot of people would say you don't get that wealthy without being bad, but all in all, morally from the film, the Cattons really are just sort of like neutral.
Yeah,
None of
yeah,
them really did anything really bad or really good,
yeah.
you know.
But outside of
And I think it
Felix,
was
I'll still
interesting
bat for
too.
Felix.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
that was, yeah.
cool. All right. Good old Barry Kay. Congrats, buddy. First GOAT award. Writing that down. Good job, bud. All right. Last award slash category I want to talk about is we've called it freshest take, but we were talking about this before we got on. Um, it's not really going to be a take this time around, but really just kind of something that is done in a different way, or a just something like either a point that they're trying to make that might be new and interesting, and I think something they executed well. So, Dan, you want to start us off on this one?
Yeah. I think for me, it was just the way that she basically, the director made the estate a character,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And I think one of my favorite moments, one of my favorite sequence of moments, or at least one of the ones that stood out to me the most, was when Felix is up there. He first sees the sort of like recreation of the maze, the labyrinth, and it's out there, and he's kind of messing with it. And Duncan's asking what he's doing. He's like, "Oh, I'm just messing around." He said, "Well, people tend to get lost in Saltburn."
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next scene, I think, is the bathtub scene.
Hmm.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, would he have done that at working at any other place? Like is that an influence of like just being around the estate, the people that live there, the things about it, um,
Right.
and the shots from it, the cinematography, the lighting, the framing, everything about the way they shot the stuff at Saltburn was
Mm-hmm.
wild in a
Yeah.
good way to me. I love
I
the cinematography, and
I
I think
agree.
we were talking earlier too about the Oscar snubs, and like I would have liked to have seen it get something because I liked it so much, but I see why it didn't,
Mm-hmm.
considering everybody else that got nominated. But if it were to have been nominated, I feel like it would have been cinematography. I would. That's what my pick would have been. So
Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, no, I on and you mentioned something, and it's actually my freshest take was the whole concept of getting lost. Um, I thought they just did a great job of talking about that, right? Just from the beginning where he talks about like people get lost at Saltburn, but from a you had that like the physical maze, which is one of the first things you actually see when you're going through the tour of Saltburn, which some of that like actually physically getting lost, and they reference that a few more times, like even when they're trying to find Felix's body, like the police can't find it because they can't make their way through the maze. But also from on a more like mental emotional level as well, like with Oliver, you know, like losing himself, whether it's on purpose or on accident, right? Which we don't really know. We're kind of left guessing, right? Like, did
mm,
he try to like change his identity and like forget who he was by like lying about his family, lying about all of these things? Or did he just get like caught up in like the lust of like things and the wealth and everything,
right,
and get lost in that? So I thought that that was a really, really interesting concept.
yeah, I agree.
So that's all our categories.
That
Anything
is all
else
the
you want to say
categories, isn't it?
about the movie before we kind of end it up here?
I think I know I said that like we weren't going to do like major spoilers, but we kind of already did. So I'm just going to jump into this one.
Yeah.
But I think one of the it was wild to me that Oliver's life really was not that bad, like his
Oh yeah.
actual life,
Yeah.
you know. And it's like I know it's in a way like a talk on like class,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it can be looked at a lot of different ways. Like one, like as good as Oliver's life was, there are still immense gaps between like middle, upper middle, upper
Mm-hmm.
class people. You
Sure.
know, like there's still huge gaps, but also too, I think you put it to like the lust of just things and the wealth and the glitz and the glam of being somebody. She mentioned his mom mentioned he didn't have a lot of friends, which
Mm-hmm.
may or may not have been on purpose, but it's even people who seemingly have it all. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he's smart. You know, he has a good family. He lives
Yeah.
in a decent neighborhood. You know, but like even that, like he just wanted more.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
Hey.
like, did he actually want more, or did he just want to be a part of something and he got carried away? You know, you don't really,
Yeah.
like you said, it's kind of ambiguous to an extent, but
And what he was willing to go through to like to get there, right? You know, it was like
right,
that. It was
yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah. And we didn't talk about this much, but it was kind of mentioned several times. Did you think Oliver loved Felix? Just
I
quick,
think
quick
so.
answer. You think so?
Yes,
Hmm. I disagree. But I think he loved the idea of. I think he wanted to be Felix, is what it ended up being.
which I know he directly like says that. I think
Yeah.
more than one way, but I think to me it was, and this is what I like about the movie too. Like you could take it. There's so much interpretation that can be taken out of it, you know.
Yeah.
But to me, it was. I think he kind of I think he kind of probably was, you know, and then at the end when he
Hmm.
says things, it's like, is that point, is he just so lost in the character that like he's not willing to admit that his own feelings,
Hmm.
you know, it was like, oh, I really liked him. Nope, just kidding. I hated him.
Just
Well,
kidding. I
I think
hated
you
him.
actually did kind of like him
Yeah.
to an
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
extent,
Yeah. For
you
sure.
know. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
yes.
I think him, which this is a whole psychology thing, him saying he hated him was that's him coping with it. No, he definitely
Right,
didn't hate Felix, but I don't
right.
know. It's interesting to think about. So we could talk about that for 20 minutes. But
Hmm.
all right. Well, that's Saltburn. So overall, like would you recommend this movie to the average moviegoer?
Average moviegoer?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah, probably I would.
Okay. Would you give him any type of caveat?
No, no, I wouldn't. I'd
So
tell
that
him to
they
watch it
text
and
you
then I'd say,
angrily.
let me know when you're finished.
They text you angrily like I did. Way
Right,
too many.
exactly. But then but see, then you softened later, and you're like, oh,
I
it's not
did.
really as bad as
I did. I did
as I thought.
soften. I would also recommend this movie. I was telling my parents are visiting this week, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, what's the first pod going to be on?" And I said, "Oh, we're going to do Saltburn." And my aunt was like, "I've heard about that one." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And they were like, "Would you recommend that movie?" And I was like, "Not to you guys."
Not
So
not to you, yes,
yeah,
but not to you.
there's certain people that I would probably not recommend this movie to, and I might also give some the caveat. Like I do think that some of the people who are kind of like disgusted by some of the things going on, I think that's
Hmm.
valid. Like I legitimately was uncomfortable at a couple different
Right,
moments. So I wouldn't spoil it, but I would just be like, just be prepared for something. So
right. But I think too, and you may the people may end up hating it, but I think as like a consumer of like film and like art as a
hmm
whole, it's like I think it's fun, and I think it's healthy to sort of challenge yourself and your notions of like what a good movie is, or like what you like I said, I wasn't necessarily thrilled to watch this movie originally because it wasn't
hmm
normally what I would have picked,
sure.
but I ended up loving it, you
Yeah.
know. and
Yeah.
and some people may have done the same thing. Oh, this is something I've heard talked about. Oh well, it's terrible and I hate it. But I
Never
think
listen to
that like
Michael and Daniel
at the end of
again.
the day you did something you wouldn't normally have done.
Yeah.
You know, you stepped out of your comfort zone to an extent, and you can go back later and say, actually, I'm not going to watch any other movies like that because I hated
Yeah.
that one. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fair, and I think that's a good point for sure. So, all right, well, I think that's where we're gonna leave that one. So, appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, catching us on YouTube, Spotify. Still haven't figured out Apple because it's being really stupid, but hopefully, you can find us on another platform. Please like, subscribe, share, talk about us to your friends. That's the fastest way that we kind of spread, right? Is by you talking about us to other people. So. Yeah, we'll be posting and getting this live in no time. So, Dan, anything you want to add?
not really. Just thanks for listening.
Yeah,
We'll get better as we go. I'm looking forward to doing this for however long we can. I love movies. Michael knows that, and Michael loves movies. And so, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Is just
absolutely.
the love of movies. So
For sure. All right. Now this is podcasting.
I didn't know. Yeah, you're right. Now this is podcasting,
We'll do better
and
next
which
time.
I
Here,
think is a
hold on.
great.
You ready? 1, 2, 3. Now this is
You
podcast.
froze.
You didn't do it. We're
Oh my gosh!
all right. We're gonna end it.
I tell you, we're gonna get better. This will get better, and at some point
We
we will
have
say
to
this is
after that.
podcasting at the same time. You froze. You're like 1, 2. It's like, dang it.
All right. Let's end it on that. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time. Peace.